everybody, and welcome to a new segment I'm going to call In Defense Of, where I'm going to spotlight and discuss records that I've seen get a lot of hate or little recognition over the years. I've been known to frustrate some people when discussing music because I really like to give everything a chance, even when, as far as many others are concerned, something is total, irredeemable garbage. But screw them. Honestly, I do think I found very few records or very few songs where there's been little merit whatsoever, and there's always something cool you can dig out of them. And what better place to kick us off here than Rush's 1996 opus and this channel's namesake, Test for Echo. I'm a sucker for great album covers, and this one just nails it. That gorgeous inukshuks and cloudy, snowy skies imagery. Lots of other great images in the liner notes as well, such as a wolf howling at the moon, aurora borealis, sunken ships, and some photos of the band in their youth. Test for Echo is not a very highly regarded record. This one usually ends up in the bottom of the ranking of Rush albums, along with Presto from 1989. It came at a weird time as well. Rush had just succeeded with the return of the progressive hard rock with 1993's counterparts, and it had been the longest gap between albums in the trio's entire career up to this point. This was also a time when grunge was largely on the way out, and the music industry was kind of in a limbo. Nu metal was just starting to become popular. Whatever the hell the Backstreet Boys were was also brewing on the horizon. Britney Spears was coming up. We were getting Nickelback as well. So it's a strange time for the music industry. But first of all, let's get more into the concept and packaging and delivery of this record. Test for Echo was, as a title, meant by the band members as both a way to address their fans and their 3-year absence. Hey, it's been a while. Are you still there? And also Neil Peart's remark that everyone wants an echo. Everyone wants to know that someone is out there listening. As mentioned before, this is also a record very in debt to the time period of its release. Geddy Lee remarked about the news and the state of the world that when observing it all, one is not sure whether to laugh. Well, that hasn't really changed that much. So he felt a certain degree of lightness, humor, and whimsy were necessary to juxtapose all the heavy topics in the lyrics. And the record sounds just like this too. Test for Echo is at once thick and heavy as well as it is airy and ethereal sounding. And honestly, it's one of my favorite qualities about this record. How it can sound like that gorgeous cover art that, I am not going to stop gushing about it. That's probably my favorite Rush cover, the Inukshuk, no joke. Production was handled by Andy Wallace, whose missing credits include Nirvana, Faith No More, Slayer, and Sepultura, among many others. So you can imagine the polished heft the heavy tracks in this record really do possess. Alex Lifeson's guitar tone is also very 90s, but not in a bad way. He doesn't overuse the grunge sound, but it has a darkness and a slight sludginess to it that sounds very strange for a Rush record. Lifeson was very involved in this one after being sidelined by the keyboards of the 80s, and it shows. The riffs, solos, and leads dominate all these tracks. Geddy Lee's bass is fantastic as well, and he has a likewise heavy and punchy tone to back up the guitars. And also, a lot of them play their songs in drop D, which is about as 90s as it gets as far as guitar tunings go. Once again, Geddy never ceases to astound with his bass creativity. There are so many cool bass lines on this record, as for any Rush record. And finally, Neil Peart's drumming is a different beast entirely. He had just, in an admirable move, taken lessons from jazz instructor Freddie Gruber and came out with a new style and technique, adding a jazzy swing and groove to his already formidable percussion ability. The difference is slight but noticeable, and he is more content to use space, silence, and really let the songs breathe. Also, it should be noted that for any musician, especially one top caliber as Neil Peart already was at this point, having been one of rock's most regarded drummers for going on 20 years, to sit back and go, I need to work on myself is just all props, man. Like it takes a lot of guts to do that at any time, never mind when you're a world-renowned superstar. In terms of the songs themselves, Test for Echo does prove an overall consistent listen, though the standouts make themselves readily apparent. The title track is a nice, dark slice of grunge-prog, killer combo if you ask me, shifting between the ethereal sections and heavy grooves. Driven is also a Rush classic, with a bass-heavy groove backed by Neil's loose percussion and Alex Lifeson's liquid guitar rain with a heavy, powerful chorus making full use of that grungy, dark sound. It's an awesome track. And the video is killer too. It's very, very almost dystopian punkish. It's nothing like anything Rush has ever done in a video before. It's very sci-fi. Check it out. And another track, The Color of Right, has some absolutely brilliant guitar leads, very bright, pairing nicely with the Aurora Borealis artwork for this track in the booklet. And finally, Resist is a beautiful anthem about perseverance with some of the best lyrics and atmospheres on the record. Seriously, Resist, oh man, there's so many great lyrics in that song. One stanza that always stood out to me was, you can fight without ever winning, but never ever win without a fight. Like, Oh, it's so good. Other tracks, while not as strong, usually have great moments that make them memorable. Time and Motion has a very heavy, dark prog sound, almost metal, and some absolutely killer bass lines in the chorus. Even though the production kind of sidelines the synthesizers a little bit and makes them feel a bit tacked on, the rest of the track is brilliant enough to make that not matter as much. Totem has a very airy chorus and some great drum fills, great use of acoustic guitars alongside the electrics. Another track, Virtuality, has a great blend of the record's two sides, light and heavy, with a groovy, almost metal riff, once again in the verses, and an acoustic strummed bright chorus. And even Dog Ears, don't worry, I'll address that one in due time, has some excellent punk-style riffs. Even the weaker tracks like Half the World and Limbo have features that stand out, like a shredding mandolin solo and cavernous vocal harmonies, respectively. The synths that dominated the 80s are occasionally used for texture, but are largely sidelined in favor of the guitars, which I'm sure a lot of Rush fans have been clamoring for at this point, as well as Leifson himself. Now, after praising the tracks like that, one has to ask, why does Test for Echo end up so at the bottom of the Rush canon? First of all, and I had to gain perspective again by going back to records like Hemispheres and Farewell to Kings, Rush has released so many goddamn great records. It's really hard to measure up to those after some time, and any record released after that 1981 period with Moving Pictures tends to get sidelined a little bit in favor of them, despite there being a lot of great records after that point, like Grace Under Pressure, Roll the Bones, and Power Windows. But a big reason I think for Test for Echo is the lyrics. After spending a lot of time with them and reflecting, I have come to appreciate them quite a bit and acknowledge their depth, but they don't seem to connect with every listener. This is largely because the lyrics tend to mirror the record's tone, jumping between light, even lighthearted, and heavy and sensitive, tending to feel a little bit polarizing altogether. A serious track like the title track has multiple lines referencing Hood Boys and Gangster Nation that, even to someone who likes this record, are really strange to hear on a Rush record. Virtuality also makes mention of net boy, net girl, and uses the word cyber quite a bit, that date the record to the 90s and once again sound a little bit odd for a band that used to talk about more medieval fantasy themes and more philosophical themes. And of course, infamously, there's Dog Ears, which arguably is the most hated track in the band's entire discography. This is because the track, while about aging and growing old, has many references to dog things. Seasons of the Itch, Sniffing at the Hydrant, Doggy Heaven, even the use of the word bitch. In proper context, mind you, but yeah. It's a little hard for me to take, despite the track being musically more than solid and interesting with heavy riffs and effective, even mournful harmonies. So what's the deal? This was actually entirely intentional. Geddy Lee has stated that the humor mixed with seriousness was needed to convey the record's themes in full, and that you essentially can't have one without the other. He also stated that Rush's music has always had whimsy and humor, which is totally true. The trees, the audible burp during the camera eye, part 4 of the Gangster of Boats trilogy, Rush have always showed a sense of goofing off, even to the point of covering their concert stage with washing machines where Geddy Lee was actually doing his laundry on stage. In terms of the lyrics themselves, the title track is easy to justify because much of it is about the media perception and how much the world is seen through that lens and in turn explained by it, hence the term Hood Boys and Gangster Nation, all that kind of stuff. That's not unlike what you'd hear on Fox News. Virtuality is pretty damn ahead of its time discussing the internet because it was still 96 at this point in time, and that things like MSN or Facebook weren't exactly invented yet, so that's pretty cool. And Dog Ears? Neil Peart has actually gone to lengths to defend that one, explaining the pains of aging in rather animalistic and even elemental, more reptile brain kind of ways, but stating he wouldn't be surprised if listeners took it as a piece of throwaway foolishness. For what it's worth, there's a lot of legitimate grief in Dog Ears for the years going by, accompanied by some great harmonies that actually convey that emotion very well, and some soaring guitar riffs. Honestly, might be a bit blasphemous, but I would take it over I Think I'm Going Bald off of Caress of Steel, because Dog Ears is much more interesting from a musical standpoint. So where does that leave Test for Echo? Geddy Lee has stated that he felt the band were at a creative low point here, and they didn't have much of a plan on the album's direction. However, his bandmates had nothing but good things to say, with Peart saying he came in full of ideas and viewing it as his highest achievement at the time, showing off the new techniques and all the stuff he learned from Freddie Gruber. Leifson even has called it one of, if not, the band's best records at time of release. This is honestly fair. This isn't the same Rush that wrote 2112 or even Moving Pictures. This is the Rush that adapted to the 90s and still wrote a one-of-a-kind record. Like it or not, no other Rush record sounds like it. Its strongest moments have great band chemistry, crisp production, and poignant lyrics, while its worst feel a little conflicted between the sounds and themes present. And while not all of it can stand up to hemispheres or even signals, I still find myself returning to it quite often as the years go by. I have found that since discovering Rush at the age of 17, I appreciate different records of theirs as the years go by. As I get older, more experienced, and go through more, life. And I find the clash of cultures, beliefs, right and wrong, and pert individual esteems resonate with me more over time. But hey, if it really is their worst, that's still a hell of a statement. You know how many bands would kill to have a record like this be their worst record? Test for Echo is, in a way, a statement of Rush's uniqueness in a unique time. When many of the progressive rock greats were long gone or struggling, they can still come out with a cool, rocking, interesting, and even a little bit lighthearted record amidst the chaos. And it's worth revisiting every few years to see if that echo is still there. That's all I got for today on Test for Echo. I think it's a Rush record worth revisiting if you haven't heard it in a while, like a lot of their records are. Keep listening and have yourself a great day, everybody.